channel's mildly gothic. Let's do an art thing. Furniture updating edition. So, this is a lamp. Ooh. This base lamp was bought off Facebook Marketplace, and then this accompanying lampshade did not come with it. This was bought at an antique store. Basically, it's not just antiques, it's, you know, people have little booths inside and can kind of sell whatever they want. So we bought this lampshade. And we like this lampshade, however, it's a little boring, it's a little plain. And if you hear me jokingly refer to the client or the customer during this video, it's my boyfriend. He's the one who has a specific vision for what this lampshade is going to look like, and I am going to help bring it to life. And what is that vision? That vision is a mica lampshade. And so I'll put a picture of on screen now of what that looks like, but they have this gorgeous dark brown color that shine orange or have this really pretty orange translucency when you put a light to it. I think I can do this. I'm not entirely sure how I want to achieve it yet, whether I want to paint it or, I don't know, do something else to it, but I am going to take you through the process of updating this lampshade to look not like this. I'm pretty excited. I think there might have to be, I'm not sure if there's going to be any deconstruction because I don't want to take these panels off. That's going to be a nightmare, a little horror movie, the bit for you there. But I am worried about like the fringe or how all of this is going to affect it, because I do think the fringe is going to end up being black when everything is said and done. Yes, this is really soothing and satisfying. That's why I keep doing it. So yeah, basically I wanted to say thrifted. It's not really thrifted, but I mean, it's not like we bought it at a store for full price. So we bought a lampshade and I'm gonna make it look not like this. So that sounds interesting to you, let the algorithm know by hitting the like button down below. Maybe leave a comment on what you think I should have done with this lampshade instead of whatever I'm about to do to it. Let me know what you think. I'm pretty excited. Peanut, please don't knock over my tripod. You want to be in the video? Come here. We have a guest temporarily. Hi, baby. Hi. She wants out, but that's fine. This is Peanut. If you haven't seen the video, I made them cat scratchers. That was a really fun video. They're very sweet. She doesn't like being picked up the most, so she's a little grumpy with me, but that's okay. This bit's about to end. So anyways, let me know what you think I should have done differently with this in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to reading them. And without further ado, let's get into this project. Hey, baby. Hi. Hey, sweetheart. Hi. Hi. Oh, okay, there you go. I am very well aware that this is not going to be the same material as the lampshade. However, I want to try an experiment because we want to achieve that mica lampshade look. And I was looking at it, and one of the characteristics of it is kind of looking like the layers of, to me, tissue paper. And so what I have here is some orange and red. I do think that some yellow as a base would probably be the best. I don't have yellow, and I just kind of want to do an experiment, so I'll probably try to keep this to maybe like half and then go get some yellow and see if that changes it. But my plan is to cut this up into a bunch of different shapes, because I don't think they should all be squares. I think that's going to be too obvious. I want it to look a little bit more natural, so probably some weird trapezoids or quadrilaterals or just, I don't know, other shapes of some of both the orange and the red. These are the same shade. I do technically have two shades of red. One is just duller than the other, so I don't know which one's gonna be better for this. I don't think the red is what I want. I do think I want yellow, but I just kind of want to see if this at all is going to kind of achieve what I want. So I'm going to stare at some lampshades and cut out some tissue paper. I didn't cut up a ton because I kind of want to get started, because I do think I'm gonna have to do this in layers. So I'm planning on using Mod Podge. This is fabric Mod Podge, because I do think that that's what I'll need to use on the actual, I don't know, I'm debating. I do have, I think, normal gloss Mod Podge. We'll see how it goes. I'm not entirely sure the difference. I'm gonna use Mod Podge. The problem is there's a bunch of different kinds. So my plan is to basically kind of just do layers. I think for the first layer, I don't really want any of them touching each other. I'll definitely need more pieces already. I don't really need to be concerned about the edges because there is a frame on this, and so if I try to hold it up to a light and see what that effect I get, two things. One, I know this paper is thicker, however with a strong enough light, hopefully I'll be able to replicate the effect. And two, light doesn't pass through wood. So I don't need to worry about the edges, so I'm going to try to keep most of my stuff kind of towards the center. I'm going to use some kind of Mod Podge. I'll tell you what kind when I stop overthinking it, and apply tissue paper to a canvas. Woo!
The process to attach the tissue paper to the canvas was very simple. You first take your Mod Podge, and for this sample I was using the matte Mod Podge, and brushed that onto the surface of the canvas, laid my tissue paper on top, and then put more Mod Podge on top of that. You do have to be careful with the brush strokes of the layer that goes on top of the tissue paper, as it's super light and very easy to flip up the edges and accidentally have it fold back on itself. But overall, you just kind of keep piecemealing it together, and it was a very simple and straightforward process.
So I think I'm going to stop my first layer here. I'm having a very hard time finding a good place to stop because this is actually very cathartic, very soothing. I decided to just use matte Mod Podge for this. I think, especially for a sample, I think it's going to work just fine. I am gluing tissue paper, so it's not, I don't know. My assumption is that this is for, like, fabric needs to be very saturated, like it you know, is much thicker. I mean, they literally say water-based glue, sealer, and finish the same thing. Yeah, I'm really not sure what the difference. This says paper or fabric. This literally says paper or fabric. Okay, so you know what? I think I'm fine using this. We'll see when it comes to the final thing. This was new. I just opened this. I don't know how long I've had this. The container doesn't seem super full, so I'm not sure what I use that for, but, I have to be really careful with the brush strokes because tissue paper is so thin and it absorbs the glue so easily. It's very easy to accidentally overturn it. But I want to let this dry for at least a good little while, because what I don't want is for, I mean, these pieces, wow, actually, these pieces I started with are already dry. So I'm going to give it like 10 minutes before I do the next layer. And I want to start with just two, and my goal with kind of the next two is to do a mosaic and try to cover up all the missing bits, which is why I may try to fit like a long skinny one in there, because I don't, especially with this being orange, I don't want to use too many layers. I want to try to avoid, I think I can actually cover that with the next one. I want to avoid too many layers because I'm afraid of it getting too thick. So I do think that I'm going to have to go to the store and see what kind of tissue paper I can find, because this is a pretty intense color of tissue paper, and I think what I'm looking for is a pale yellow, which it's not spring, it's basically summer now, especially summer by the time this goes up. So I don't know what's going to be in stores, but I do think that the choice of tissue paper is going to matter a lot for this. But this is fun. And I definitely want to give, yeah, these dry. Wow, this dries down really quickly. That actually makes me super happy because I was afraid that this was going to take forever in between layers. So I'm going to let this dry and you'll get to see me doing the next layer in just a second. It's not fully dry yet, but I already have some thoughts. So towards the end, I started kind of ripping these softer edges to fill in some of these gaps. And I also started... So some of these have big overlapping sections versus tiny overlapping sections. And I am very interested in holding this up behind a very direct light, and I'll probably use my ring light because I think it's probably, or I'll put it up to a single bulb. I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'm going to put it up to a very direct light source so I can see what the light looks like shining through it. Because one, I don't think this is the right color. I've said that multiple times. Two, I think more than anything what I'm learning is technique. And I'm interested in seeing how these different sections look and if there is a section that I like more or not. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is I want to rip them. I think these harsh edges are going to look forever and nothing more than torn tissue paper. And there's one edge, it's really hard to see, but there's a torn edge. This one's torn, this one was torn. And just that one section alone looks far more natural than any of the rest of this. There's a few other torn pieces. One problem I've also discovered is I'm too good at tearing small sections of tissue paper into straight lines.
So this is definitely going to be a task in patience. Yeah. In creating large quantities of it. So I'm gonna let this dry, and as I was going along, it was actually, I didn't have to worry too much about layering it up. I do think letting the first layer dry before going on top. So I think this is also then a lesson in kind of what size the pieces should be. Should they be smaller? Should they be larger? Because it depends if you want more overlap or less overlap. Because coincidentally, if you want less overlap, I think the base layer pieces need to be bigger and your second layer pieces are smaller, and you just kind of like piecemeal them around. Versus if you want more overlap, you use big first layer pieces and big second layer pieces. So I think there's a lesson there. There's a lesson in how this gets torn. I think the application is fine. I mean, I think it's going to change, obviously, because it's a bigger shape. And so there'll be some considerations and stuff to do there. But overall, I'm very pleased with this, and I'm going to go wash this brush so I don't ruin it. And I'll show you what it looks like when this is dried and in front of a light. So I've been busy. And obviously this doesn't look anything like what I was describing earlier. And I got a little distracted, and that's why I didn't end up recording a good bit of this. So let me explain what we have here. So my orange section originally is on this side up to here. And then thinking about it more, they have a very dark tone to them. So instead of focusing, because also tissue paper is thin, so light shines through it. So instead of focusing on what the outer color of the tissue paper looks like, I thought about focusing on achieving that final result. Is that what I probably should have done in the first place? Yes, but I digress. So I went with black, and so this is 2 layers of the black. I put a few spots of orange there to see how the orange laid on top of the black, and then over here, I have the black on top of orange. And this is a single flat strip of black tissue paper on top of the orange, and then this is a single strip of orange and then a single strip of black on top. So I'm going to talk about kind of what this result was while I show you what it looks like. So another thing I did though is I separated it from the frame. I don't think I'm going to use this for anything anymore. Maybe I'm not sure, but I did. And by separate it, I do mean just cut it off. So I can't stretch and reuse this. My mom is probably like cringing at that so dramatically. I know, I'm sorry, don't yell at me. So I did that because unfortunately most of this section of the tissue paper was on the border, and so I couldn't actually get a really good look of what this plain black strip on top of the patchwork of orange looked like without removing it from the backing. So the result is one of these 2 sections looks the best. This section with the patchwork black over the patchwork orange just has a few too many like super dark spots, because as soon as the black overlayers itself, it's completely opaque. Versus when the orange overlays itself, there's still a little bit of translucency and color that comes through, but black over black, even just 2 layers, basically becomes completely opaque. So that's why I kind of went to one of these. This sort of works, but not really. Also, the final result of this is not nearly as attractive as just black on the outside. So this one has this really nice kind of light patchworking of orange, and you can just kind of see those sections underneath it. And then this one has a beautiful, consistent kind of glow to it. And so I think I have reviewed these options with the customer, and we've made a decision. This would be easier, and I think it's really pretty. However, we both agree that kind of this light patchwork of the orange underneath is a little bit more true to the mica lampshade effect that we're going for. I think the other difference is I do like the ripped edges better. So I think there's a few techniques that I'm going to incorporate. I'm going to do large-ish pieces. I don't want to do too many small ones unless I'm trying to fill in gaps. I don't want a significant amount of overlap, but I want enough. So, you know, we're going for kind of more of like edges, and we'll figure that out. With ripped, softer borders, and then just a flat black overlay on top. So it's technically 3-ish layers total, as far as kind of what's there at the thickest points. But that is the approach I am going to move forward with for the lampshade. So I think this was an absolutely incredibly worthwhile test. I wouldn't have wanted to discover this on the lampshade, because now I don't know how you can't really get that off. I mean, the whole point is it's glue, so it's stuck to it, which it's good. It's doing its job. It's just, you know, that would have been bad if it was on the lampshade. So that is the plan. And so I guess I get now to strategize how I want to actually proceed with the lampshade. Before I do anything on top of the lampshade, I need to clean the lampshade. And so I've already lint rollered it, and I Googled how to do this because we'll see. I have some warm soapy water, and I'm going to use the soft side of the Scrub Mommy sponge, not that side. I'm also going to put a towel down, and then I'm going to lightly sponge over the inside and outside of this, and then go over it with a clean sponge with no soap to try to get it out, and then it's just going to get left to dry. I want to make sure it is fully clean, obviously, because once I put this applique on top, it's going to be much harder to clean. So I want to make sure I give it a really good clean now. I don't know my stand set up for this, but I just want to show. So there's some of the stuff on the inside, and this is actually getting it off. So that makes me feel really good. There's been some other spots, but the inside of this already looks so much better. So I'm very pleased that this is working. So if you'll notice, this looks a little bit different, and the reason is this trim was just glued on. So this is basically completely separated, and not only that, this outer fabric isn't secured to this base in any way at all. So this is going to turn into a slight reconstruction as well. I'm going to go ahead and do a whip stitch for, there's a lady on Instagram who makes these really intricate lampshades, and she kind of shows a lot of her process. And so I'm going to look at that and then also Google as much as I can, because this is not good or acceptable. I'm going to check the trim on the top as well. I'm really glad I found that for two reasons. Better longevity of the lampshade, and then also now I actually don't have to worry about this getting stuck, getting any of the tissue paper that I want to use stuck under it. And also I can now actually either replace this trim with something else or dye it separately. I was actually not sure how I was going to get the trim to be the color I want, and that actually removed really easily. So I have a little bit, I have to wipe it down with some just clean water. Then we're gonna let her dry. But yeah, that is a very interesting discovery. This is not attached to this rod, if it'll focus. It's trying to focus on the fringe inside. But yeah, this is not attached in any way. So bit of a delicate operation here. We're going to see how I can fix this. But yeah, this is now not just redecorating a lampshade, it's kind of saving it, I guess. As I suspected, this trim was not attached either, and it's not secured at the top. So we are going to let her dry, and I will probably start with securing the top because I think that's going to be the more important spot to then make sure I get tension for all the rest of it. So yeah, that's an interesting discovery. Is it going to make my life easier for actually detailing the sides? Yes. Is it going to make my life harder in some other ways? Also yes. These also aren't secured in any way. So that's, I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah. Okay. We're discovering things with this lampshade. Because I do want to replace these anyway. So, I mean, and you can see kind of how dirty the lampshade, like what the original color of the fabric was. So I'm not too worried, but yeah, the kind of scope and direction of this project has changed a little bit. So she's gonna dry while I brainstorm what to do. Now, this also was from an antique shop, and it does have kind of, I decided to pull these pieces off, what I would characterize as it smells like it, and that's not a bad thing. I kind of find this smell, it's like a smell of an old book. It's kind of a charming smell. However, that also probably just means this glue is really, really old, and that's why it didn't hold up well to being washed. The good news is I want to modify it anyways. So hopefully, by trying to actually secure some of these bits down, whether it be with new glue or with thread, I can increase the stability and longevity of this lampshade in the future. So I'm very excited. Plus, this is actually gonna make my life so much easier when it comes to putting the final finish on this thing, like all the way around as far as like what I want to do. So I'm very excited about that fact. But yeah, I decided to take all these strips off. They're over here on the table. I'll probably lay them out to dry. I'll lay this out to dry, and then we can go from there. But yeah, that was an interesting discovery, and I'm pretty glad I did it because I do think it's going to make actually changing what this thing looks like much easier. However, I also think it's going to make my life a lot harder because now I have to add all the accoutrement back to the lampshade. But yeah, this was not what I was expecting to happen, but we are going to work with it. So I don't know why I keep patting it, just good lampshade, I guess. It also, interesting construction note, the panels. So each 2 of these are a panel. So we have seams here, 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 and here. So there's 5 panels total, each covering 2 like spans of the lampshade. So that is what we have. So in the previous clip, I actually noticed that there was some dirt down in the bottom cavities of these things, and they peeled away pretty easily, and I was able to wash and get all of those out. Again, I'm going to start with the top and then, you know, work my way down. I don't think these are secured to the sides at all. I think all of this is glued in place. So, going to be interesting. I'm trying not to peel it all the way off because I do not want to re-stretch the whole lampshade. I'm okay with doing just a little bit as long as the top stays in place. There was a little bit of dirt in there, but I was able to get it all, you know, pretty much sorted. So she is now drying, should be just fully drying, sit there, chill. And so I have everything laid out, but I found a pin in the lampshade when I was peeling the bottom little scallops back to clean down in there. Yeah, I found a pin, so that's interesting. That's just been in there. So yeah, everything is now going to dry, and then we will begin lampshade surgery. So this has been an adventure already. This is not what I thought I was getting myself into, but woo, I don't know. Okay, so I have a setup, and these pins are not placed probably in the best order for me not stabbing myself with them, but I didn't want to push pins this way because I didn't want to push the fabric away from the rim. I wanted it to stay where it's supposed to be. So what I have is I have white thread. Luckily this is going to get covered anyways, but that's pretty close to the color of the lampshade, and I'm essentially going to whip stitch around this. So I was looking at that one lady who creates, I think it's Ace of Spades is the Instagram handle, I'll put it on screen, creates the most stunning Victorian lampshades. And so I'm going to kind of try to mimic some of the techniques. Her video clips are super short, and I think she sells courses on how to make them, but I'm going to try to wing it and basically whip stitch to try to better keep this secured. Is this super necessary? I don't know. But I want to try because I think this is going to be a relatively important step to just make sure that this stays stable. So without stabbing myself with all of the pins that I've put in, and I may have to go get, I have thimbles. I don't think this is the direction that I'm going to stay. Go. All right, my knot wasn't big enough. We just pulled right on through. So actually, I think I'm going to do that again and just tie it down to, ow. I already stabbed myself. Yeah. Was this the best pin setup? No, but we're going to work with it. So I'm going to take these and tie myself a knot. I just wanted some pins set up before I kind of got started, and it just kind of started going everywhere. So I don't know what I'm doing, which isn't new, but sorry, I'm trying to tie a knot. Okay. Now there's a knot tied, and so I'm going to whip stitch around, trying to capture as much of this fabric as I can in both edges, and just generally trying to secure this together.
The stitching around the top was honestly not that bad, super quick. The needle went through very easily and definitely gave me a false sense of confidence for how well the bottom portion of this was going to go.
The stitching around the top is done, and only with minor incident. This is where I started. Literally within the first couple stitches, I freaking pricked myself and got blood on it. It's fine, my finger's fine. So this is stitched all the way around. Is this fully necessary? I don't know, but I'm doing my best to try to make this kind of an updated stable version. Lampshades should not be undergoing that much stress. However, this one is going to be the bigger thing. So some of the glue got sticky again as it dried, and this is where I think repinning it is going to be super important. And I actually I think I'm going to moisten some of these panels again because I didn't think about it at the time. Some of them did shrink as they dried. And so I tried to kind of peel and put some of them back. So I do think I'm going to get these slightly damp again, trying to avoid the edge itself so I can stitch it. But I do think I need to get it slightly damp again and pin it all in place so that I can then stitch it down. I have my pins going all the way around. I'm going to start here, which is why I left a gap here, because that's the lack of a gap is what caused me to prick my finger on the top side. So, ow, one of them gets me on the side of the hand. As you can see, there's definitely still some ripples. I don't think all of the sections are as tight as they could be or even as they used to be. I'm working with such small, limited fabric when it comes to getting up over the edge of this. So I may go through, and use the light to kind of tell where some of those bubbly sections are before I go ahead and stitch it up. I also don't know how much it's going to show, especially if I'm going to be changing the entire outside and kind of structure of it. So we will see. This is kind of a trust the process, even though it's not a process I've ever done before, so I don't know how to trust it. But I'm going to do my absolute best. I might mess with it a little bit more before sewing it, but I'm going to do the exact same whip stitch that I did on the top for this guy.
A quick update, I ended up putting it on the lamp stand and completely repinned it the other way because it's much easier to pull. Wow, English. It's much easier to pull it down than it was to pull it up. And now there's still a little rippling, but overall there's significantly less rippling across this entire thing, and I feel much more confident going into the whip stitching. This is a bunch of tissue paper in a Tupperware container because I have just spent 2 hours ripping up 2 sheets of tissue paper, large sheets, into pieces so that I can begin to put them on the lampshade. I may need more, but I wanted to at least start with what felt like a good quantity. So yeah, fun fact, this takes a while.
So here's a little real-time glimpse into what this process takes. It's very simple. I did end up using the fabric Mod Podge for the orange layers because these were going directly on top of the lampshade fabric, and I figured if it's made for fabric, why not use it? And this is the exact same process I did for the canvas, where you spread the glue, Mod Podge, onto the fabric first, tissue paper down, and then cover the tissue paper with more Mod Podge on top, and move. The piecemealing process was kind of the same, kind of not. I was trying to be a little less matchy about it, but also make the gaps kind of smaller. I don't know. I was also just going for what kind of felt right and looked cool, and it worked. So cannot complain.
So I put it back on the lampshade just to dry. You can see how glossy it is by the shine on top. This is a true trust the process, but at the same time, I'm kind of really vibing with just this. But this is not the end state as the customer wants. This is not it. So I think it's still a little tacky. But I think this is mostly dry enough, especially on top, for me to probably go ahead and try the second coat, where I will be trying to shape and pattern match to fit in the gaps as much as I can with a little overlap. We don't want everything to be overlapped, but yeah, I basically made a giraffe print, and it's kind of really fun. It's giving me I'm gonna say a decade, and it's gonna be wrong. I think 60s, 70s. What decade do you think this is giving? Because I'm bad at understanding the styling of them. But it's giving me very retro. I kind of really like it, but we're gonna keep going because I have a vision that we hope is gonna succeed. But yeah, this is our product as we have right now, fully coated, and I love it, even though we still have a lot to go. I think this took me 3 hours to do? Question mark? We'll see. Maybe I'll try to track better how long the rest of it took. But yeah, I think this full first coat took me question mark 3 hours? 2 hours? At least 2 hours. At least 2 hours. I'm not sure. But I'll try to track the next one better. So this is about an
another hour and a half update. It took me about 30 minutes to do like 3 sections. And if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I knew that. If there's 10 sections, 30 minutes a section, yeah, that's about an hour and a half, a little more. And I still have the entire bottom, and this section is bigger. I'm doing most of this on a Saturday where I have nothing else to do. And there's the baby. Hi, sweetheart. Thank you for laying down on my cables. And this has basically taken all day. And I'm not done. And I still have to do the black. I'm definitely not getting to the black. There's a lot of these tiny sections that I'm trying not to worry about right now. And my plan is to just go back and try to patch some of them up as I go. I've been patching some of them. But when they're that small, it's really hard to get it to stick, especially when there's like so much other wet from the Mod Podge going on. So I'm leaving those, but I think it's looking pretty good so far. I still like this. I like this. This is not the vibe of my house, but I do really like it. I like this, even though it's not the final product, and so I'm very excited to see how the final product is going to turn out. But without further ado, I'm going to spend another 2 hours doing this section. Woo! We have just finished going all the way around on the base, and this is all the tissue paper I have left from my original tearing it up. Again, I do still have a lot of the little tiny open gaps, so next step is to let this dry and ignore it for several hours, and then go back and try to cover up all of those tiny gaps. But if we go to a section that's been done for a minute, I think that looks really cool. I think that looks really good. You can kind of see what it's going to look like when the black's over it as far as the different modeling and the pattern. Yeah, there's a few spots that I still have to fill in because I want to make sure that there's an even orangeness to it. I don't want there to be any little spots that are going to just be uncolored or toned. I'm also not too worried about the edge because there's going to be a trim that cover it, so I'm just going to make sure I get as much of kind of the edge as possible. Like that might be a little too much exposed. I was also thinking that maybe I should have done the inside with the orange, because then when you look at it, because obviously it's going to be kind of sitting above your eye level, you know, if you're sitting down on a couch or something. And so I'm wondering if I should have done the orange on the inside, so then the inside would look like the orange, and then I could have done the black on the outside. But it's a little too late for that now, because if I add too much more orange, like if I did the inside in orange, I think it's going to get too opaque. So it's fine. We're going to deal with it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just something that maybe if you want to do this for yourself, try it out. I think that could be a cool way to do it. But yeah, once this is dried and all the holes are patched up, it's time to figure out the black. So I'm sorry the lighting is terrible. This looks a very different orange color. I'm at a point where I'm struggling to decide where to stop, because like every time I see a small bit, it's like, okay, well that's actually white, but then is there another spot that's like a pale orange that I should cover? Like, do I cover that? Is that big enough? So I'm getting into my perfectionist nitpick, and the smaller they get, the harder and harder and harder they are to actually control without getting really, really crinkly bumpily. That's bumpily, that's a word. So what comes next is I'm going to do the black in panels. And so I'm going to lay it over the top and kind of create a stencil. And from there, try to basically have one panel and then cut all of them out, because the black is going to get laid as one full sheet on top. I'm a little terrified for how this is going to go, because that is a huge piece, but fingers crossed it goes well. This was a very scary process that I very quickly got the hang of. I decided to do just one section instead of 2 at a time, like the actual fabric, just because I thought it would be easier to manage. And I started at the top by Mod Podging the surface of the lampshade at the top and laying down the tissue paper. While doing that, making sure that it was aligned all the way to the bottom, and then peeling up the bottom part of the tissue paper to then put Mod Podge on the bottom half. I still had a little bit of ability to shift it if the bottom was off while just the top was glued. I was afraid that if I glued the whole thing at once, that I was going to lose that. Once I was confident it was stable in place, I put Mod Podge on the top, and the biggest thing was making sure that the edges were fully secured down. I took some extra time to do that because I did not want to risk it pulling up or having gaps for anything to get under in any way, shape, or form. But very scary in theory, very straightforward in practice. So it is the next day, and it doesn't come across the best in video, but I think this looks fantastic. I've also been using the matte Mod Podge for this, which it still looks glossy, but there's actually a texture difference. This one like still feels sticky. This actually feels really smooth. So I definitely am happy with going with the matte Mod Podge. So the next step, you'll notice there's a little bit of overlap. I've tried to keep that primarily on these ridge lines because where the black overlaps is already going to be 100% opaque. So the next plan is to try to cut the next sections even more precisely to just have overlap right here and not anywhere else, and then glue these down. That's why I did them in these alternating sections. And we are so close to being done with the outside of this lampshade. I need a little bit of help. I have looked at it, what it looks like for this section, like from the inside. It looks a little bit different than the canvas, as I kind of expected, but I honestly really like it, and it'll work for what we're trying to do. And there's a peanut on a box. Hi, Peanut. Psst, psst. Hi. But lampshade, cat. I have picked a terrible time to film this because my dishwasher is running, but for the fringe, instead of trying to find new fringe, I'm going to keep this fringe, but I'm going to dye it using RIT all-purpose dye, and this time I am following the instructions on the bottle exactly, unlike when I dyed my wig. Slight difference, it mentions adding salt if it is cotton, rayon, or linen, and vinegar if it's nylon, silk, or wool. I have no idea what material this is, so I'm going to do a little bit of research to figure out what I should add to the dye bath, but we're going to give it our best shot and go ahead and dye it. I thought that this would be easier than finding new trim. We will quickly find out if that was a stupid assumption or not. So, it is dyed, it is now drying, and we've learned a couple things. One, the fringe and this outside piece were separate. Those completely separated in the dye bath. That's okay. Also, this is an absurd amount of fringe. It goes down, around, and then in a little bit. So I actually think there might have been 2 layers of it. That feels way too big to just wrap around the lampshade once. Which means the other thing, and that's it pulled apart, and so the ends are very, very frayed. So not sure what I want to do about that. But it's dyed, it is drying, and so that actually I think might be a good thing as far as this coming off, because I did buy a new trim that I think will be super cute for going up the spines of the lampshade. That's why I didn't dye those, because I'm not going to reuse those. I bought some ribbon that I think will be really cute. But yeah, I think the fringe might have been doubled up, and I know for a fact that that piece was separate. So this is now drying. It sat in the dye bath for like 30-ish minutes. Did it need that long? I don't know. The bottle said so. So it's drying. And once it is dry, I get to put it on the lampshade somehow. I think that's the next step. So we have a slightly different tissue paper here, but you can see, so here's the non-crinkled, the one I got from Walmart, the one I got from Michael's, and here's the crinkled versus the original tissue paper. So the one from Michael's seems a little bit more blue, but it has more of the matte tone compared to the one from Walmart. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not willing to go to like 7 more stores and find the exact matching tissue paper. So I'm gonna make a choice between one of these. I just don't know which one yet. But the fact that colors between products are this inconsistent drives me up the absolute wall. So I picked the I picked the Michael's tissue paper, which was the slightly blue toned but not shiny tissue paper, and I'm already regretting that decision. It's much more blue. I'm really hoping it mellows out and does not look so aggressive. I have a slight possible plan on how to fix it, but we'll see. But for the time being, I'm going to point that away from me and not worry about it. What we're going to do next is I found this beautiful ribbon, which I think is really pretty and will help kind of harken to the orange tones underneath and just look really, really nice. And so this is going to be my trim down the edges of the lampshade. And so I'm going to glue it on. The glue we are going to use is E6000, which is a super handy, super reliable, basically good for so many things kind of glue. So we are going to use E6000 to apply these, and I can do 8 out of 10 because I can't do those 2. And then once that's dry, I will put those 2 on, and we can do, this is also the trim I'm actually going to
think about replacing for the top and the bottom. I've toyed with the idea of adding some beads into the bottom because I am going to reuse the fringe. I don't know how I feel about that, so we will see. But I am very excited. I have plenty of this. I cut these into strips already, so this is designed to go here. One of the hardest things is going to be making sure that I keep it straight and even and it doesn't lean too much one way or the other. But yeah, we are regretting tissue paper choices already. It's fine. I probably should have just used the one that was more true black. It's a little too late to pull it up, so it's fine. I'm gonna get to gluing these on.
The process for gluing these on was very straightforward. I applied E6000 all the way down, and I did try to use the spine of the frame as my center point and put a little glue on either side so that the entirety of the ribbon would lay flat. I was trying to not have the edges of the ribbon pick up off the surface of the lampshade. However, I also didn't want the E6000 to push out from under the edge and then just leave lumps of glue on the outside of my lampshade. These stayed really, really well. E6000 isn't the most tacky immediately. It does best kind of when you can hold what you need to in place for a couple minutes, and then it will set very, very nicely.
So I have this very chaotic assortment done up in my bathroom because I am going to steam the fringe. The dyeing process left it super, super wrinkled, and I have a steamer, so I'm going to steam it completely. And then I think I might go through and trim up some of the ends. I am not going to film this because it's going to be a nightmare, but I did want to, we are a DIY queen for this nightmare scenario. Thank God I managed to find some clothespins. And here is the after. I have lightly trimmed it up. Yes, I trimmed it while it was hanging. Did I realize halfway through that was probably a bad idea? Yes. So I might trim it some more when it actually gets on the lampshade. I'm sorry, the audio for this clip is going to be terrible, so we'll keep it short. But everything is now smooth and straight and there are no snags or tears, so let's go put this on the lampshade.
Attaching the fringe was not nearly as straightforward of a process. I do think that it was originally doubled up when it was put on, so almost folded in half and then applied that way because of how I pulled it apart, and I almost wish I did the same thing. I'm not sure if it shrunk in any way, but the remaining fringe would not have gone all the way around the lampshade again, so I'm not entirely sure. But I do kind of wish it was a little bulkier in the final product. I still like it. However, I used clothespins and basically just glued a small section and pinned it in place. And after holding it there for a few minutes or so, I would move the clothespins because I am trying to glue the fringe, not the clothespins, to the lampshade. And I followed the exact same process for the final ribbon that went on top. So I've been piecemealing this trim all the way along the bottom as I go, and unfortunately it is just barely going to not meet. So what that means, it's so annoying. I gave myself plenty of extra on the top because I thought the way that it curved might influence, I might need more than I thought. I didn't need this much more, and if I had just been a little less conservative on the top, I would have had enough to meet on the bottom. But I cut my end super clean, and I have plenty of fragments, and I don't care enough to go buy a new spool of ribbon just to do this one thing. I'm perfectly happy just kind of piecemealing the scraps. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get all this in place and then try to get the cleanest ends on a piece of the scrap and line it up and glue that in place. So yeah, I've just been going along basically doing about this much at a time because I have 3 of these clothespins that actually get around it pretty nicely. So yeah, I'm gonna finish up this last section and show you, I guess, how I piecemeal it together and then turn it on. Obviously I can turn the lamp on, but I haven't turned it on with the full lampshade done, so I don't know what that looks like, so I'm very excited. This is just demonstrating how I glued on this entire trim. It was a very slow process because I wanted to make sure to follow the curve as much as possible and that everything was glued on super, super securely. E6000 will glue anything to anything, which is why it's incredible, and also means you cannot undo it once it is glued, not without much damage or distress. So I was definitely trying to get it right the first time because it was the only time.
The moment of truth. God, this is not as...
It's another goddamn... Okay, I know it's a black light bulb. We'll do the actual reveal in a second, but that looks really cool. All right, take two. Now the actual moment of truth, hopefully. Look at that. I think that's so pretty. That actually turned out fantastic. Actually, I had no doubt in myself. What am I talking about? No, I had so much doubt in myself. Oh my god. This was a very trust the process. So I'm pulling off these final glue strands. But well, I guess I'll do my outro right here. I don't know if I'm in frame with the lampshade. I think so. This project has been stressful. At points, am I in frame? Who knows? This has been a roller coaster of emotions. I think there's some elements a little sad with how the fringe turned out. It is super like frayed at the end, and I have a bunch extra. I have, again, a bunch extra. I'm not sure if it was supposed to originally go all the way around twice. It will not reach twice, so I don't entirely know what happened there. But I decided not to use the extra fringe. I think it still looks fine. I'm in love with the ribbon that I picked for it. And I actually don't think you can tell where the other black piece of it is, where the extra one. Another thing I was really worried about is there's a lot of these places with creases in the tissue paper. And like, while you can see it, the number of them that you can actually see is much less than I thought it was going to be. So this actually worked really, really, really well. There's only really, oh my god, is it literally just that one? There's like a small one. But yeah, that's fine. I haven't actually finished this small bit of the trim. I will finish it. I'm just gonna patch that up. I probably have included the footage of me doing that earlier, but that's fine. I was just too excited to turn this on because I did a lampshade out of, I think I've unlocked a new genre of craft for my channel. And I can't say it's one that's gonna reappear, but I'm happy it showed up at least once. So if you like the final product of this lampshade, let the algorithm know. Give this video a like and a subscribe. If you think that I completely ruined this lampshade, let me know in the comments down below. It was only $12 when we bought it. What would you pay for this lampshade if you found this lampshade in a thrift store? There's tape sticking to the lampshade. We're not gonna notice that. How much would you pay for this lampshade now if you found it in a thrift store? Is it more than $12? Is it less than $12? I don't know. Please let me know what you think. I'm in love, if you can't tell, because I keep playing with the fringe. This project came out far better than I think I ever could have hoped. So yeah, I'm very excited. I hope this has been an entertaining watch. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you in the next one.